I think it would be appropriate to start with a little bit of a background for around myself. So first of all, I'm dialing in from London today, but I am actually originally from Denmark, which is somewhere between Sweden. I saw we had someone from Stockholm, and we also had somebody from Berlin. And I've been managing projects and programs for probably coming up to 25 years. But something changed for me in 2008, which basically made me change my career. In 2008, I was working for a financial institution in London. Prior to that, I'd been a consultant, and I attended a leadership course. And I had two epiphanies that happened during that leadership course. The first one was that project managers and change agents need leadership. And the second epiphany was the power of coaching, because that was the first time I was coached. So I began a journey of becoming a coach. I began to study the people I was working with in the bank where I was working. And in 2013, I decided to make that my full-time profession. So today I work for myself. I run leadership workshops, project management workshops, and I also coach individuals, mostly in the project management and change management arena. Along the way, I wrote a few books, and one of them I have here. It's a second edition, the Power Project Leadership. Why do I need to look at it to understand what the title is? I should know very well by now what the title is. I've just been told that it's being translated into Polish. So I don't know if we have anyone from Poland on the call, but there you go. In about a year's time, it will be out in Polish. A lot of the insights I will share with you today are from the book. So that's a resource, a go-to resource for you. Okay, let's actually move forward with some of the content. So there's a few topics for us in this webinar today. There is the project management side, there's the leadership side, there's the emotional intelligence side, and there's the uncertainty. And I will try to weave those together. But first of all, I would like to give a bit of context around projects. We have some statistics here from the Project Management Institute, the PMI. They say that 40% of strategic initiatives fail. They also say that 48% of projects are not delivered on time. And furthermore, 69% meet, or only, well, it depends how you look at it, but 69% meet their goals and business intent. So these statistics are mostly from the US. The last one is from the UK, from the government in the UK Infrastructure and Projects Authority. They're the ones that manage the big infrastructure projects in the UK. And they say that less than half had a green or amber green status. So I have for a while now, as some others have, been puzzling this question: why do projects continue to fail? And one of the reasons is that we have growing complexity and uncertainty. And the current situation, the current crisis is really just increasing that level of complexity and uncertainty. But even step back 2 months ago, before we had the virus, we have an increased amount of technological change. We have teams that connect remotely from various time zones, from various cultures. We have a world that's interconnected. And all of this we see now more and more in the current situation. We are definitely interconnected. If supply chain is interrupted in one part of the world, we feel it in the other. If there is a virus in China, we feel it in the rest of the world. So we are interconnected, and there is more and more uncertainty, more and more complexity. What that means is that in order to manage projects and situations with this level of complexity and uncertainty, we need leaders. And I will distinguish between managers and leaders, and that will become clearer as we go through this webinar. We explicitly need leaders who have a high level of emotional intelligence. And there's a very good reason for that. And the reason is that when we have leaders who can really tap into people's potential, they shift the burden of thinking from themselves to the team. Because in a world of uncertainty and complexity, I, as the manager and leader, cannot hold all the answers. That's like completely unrealistic. So the better I am at tapping in and understanding my own emotions and the emotions of my team, the better I am at empowering the team, at finding the answers from my team. We may not know what the answers are to uncertainty right now, but within the team, perhaps we can find a way forward. So that's really the premise that I will explore with you in this webinar. And first of all, just to clarify how I use the words management and leadership. I've put it up in a little bit of a black and white way here, or blue and green if you like, but that's really just to make my message a bit clearer. We have here on the management side, and the way I use the word is somebody who's very good with the task side, somebody who is more process oriented, somebody who's good perhaps also at giving directions. And you see Superman appearing here. And that's because on many projects and change initiatives, the hero project manager is very welcomed. We need somebody who can step in and save the day, save the projects, tell us what to do, direct the team, and get us out of this mess. And it's very convenient for senior managers to get that hero project manager in. That may be a person who does things in the right way, maybe somebody who's very cognitively intelligent. But the problem is that the hero project manager may be putting more burden on him or herself. They might feel that they need to find all the answers themselves, and that just doesn't leverage the team. So in contrast, I'm talking about leadership. I'm talking about somebody who is more people-oriented, somebody who is better at tapping in and connecting with the team. Not somebody who does things right, but who does the right things. And there is a big difference. So leadership is not about what I know as much as my attitudes and my behaviors. Because with the right attitudes and behaviors, I can tap into the team. Because the world is changing so quickly, again, that to rely on my knowledge is not the right way forward. It won't help me to manage complexity and uncertainty. I need some knowledge, for sure, but I don't need to continuously rely on my own knowledge to be on top. And I'm not criticizing management here. I want to make that clear. We actually need management to deliver our projects. But we need, the more complexity and uncertainty we have, the more weight we need to put on the leadership side. And unfortunately, in the work I do, I see many change managers and project managers they're missing this green part. So that's what we want to put emphasis on. And what you can see here, the third last bullet, is the emotional intelligence. For me, that's one of the big differences between management and leadership. So that's what we'll unpack now. What is it really that, how can we use, what is emotional intelligence and how can it help me to lead through uncertainty? First of all, I would like to engage you a little bit with some questions here. You can type in your answers in the chat box. I'll give you a moment to read through these 4 statements and just type in the chat box which one or which ones you feel are correct. So just type in the number 3. EQ is a flexible skill set that can be learned and improved at any age. So you seem to be agreeing to number 3, which I agree with too. So number 4 is interesting. Less than 50% of the abilities that are essential for a leader's performance are emotional competencies. Actually, it is more like 90%. And that's according to Daniel Goleman, which I will talk about right on this slide. Because now we're looking at what emotional intelligence really is. And I use EI and EQ kind of simultaneously, or to mean the same thing. If we look at the definition, then emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of, control and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So it really means that I'm able to, there's two sides to this. There is really my own emotions, and then there are the emotions of others. These are two sides that we will explore in more detail. And we really have to mention Daniel Goleman here, because he in many ways is accredited with being the father of emotional intelligence because of his book. He was one of the first writers to publicize really what it meant. And what he's saying and what he found and shares in the book is that over 90% of the abilities that are essential for a leader's performance are emotional competences. For people who are non-leaders, it's less than that. He uses the word about the number about 60%. So the more you move into the leadership space, the more your emotional competences are important. And that's because the more you move into the leadership space, the more it's about people. It's people who deliver projects. It's not processes. We also have to say what emotional intelligence is not. So it's not about suppressing my emotions. It's not about displaying everything. So some people say, oh no, but I'm authentic. Authentic means that I'm angry, I show my anger, for instance. But neither of those are accurate reflections of what emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is sitting with the emotion, feeling the emotion, recognizing the emotion. I feel fear, perhaps. I feel uncertain. I feel scared. Or let's say in the current situation, or let's say on a project, I feel angry that my team member hasn't delivered. I feel angry that my stakeholder is giving me yet another change request so close to the go live. So if you just react to that emotion, you will go and you will show your emotion perhaps. Or if you have been taught that emotion is bad and it creates conflict, you'll suppress it. So what this is about sitting with it and actually deciding what's the appropriate response. That's what we're saying. There's no catch-all. It's about, in every situation, weighing up what is the right way to respond. Now, I would like you to take a pen and a paper and record. I have a number of questions for you. How easy or difficult do you find the following questions? And I would like you to record in each of the instances whether it's easy or difficult for you. So for each sentence, do you find it easy or difficult? And when you have recorded your answers, perhaps you can use the chat box to share some of the situations that you do find the most difficult. What is it that's most challenging for you? 7 and 8, demonstrating patience and trusting others. 7 and 8 again, and 3, controlling our impulses. 8, definitely. 8, trusting others. Oh, we have a theme here. Listening to others. 7 and 8. 5, understanding people's underlying feelings. 3, 8, and 4, controlling impulses, trusting others, appearing calm in the face of pressure. We have 1? So nobody finds number 1 challenging, or so much number 2. 3, 6, and 8. 8 is a big one. 5 to 8. Okay, so it's the bottom ones that you find more challenging. So hold those challenges as we go through this webinar, and also hold them and discuss them when we come to our breakout rooms. So the other thing I would say is, it sounds like most of you have a balance here, but if you find everything easy on this list, probably you're in denial, probably need to ask for feedback from somebody. And if you find everything difficult, perhaps you're being too hard on yourself. So, but it sounds like most of you had a few numbers. So perhaps we have very realistic people on the call today. Okay, I will go through the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. And you see the first 2 columns here, the first 2 pillars, they're about self. They're about me looking inwards, understanding my own emotions and managing them. And the last 2 pillars with the light blue, that's more what I do outwardly. But before we can lead others, we really need to lead ourselves and understand our own emotions. So the first one is about self-awareness, noticing how I feel. And it might be a weird thing to say because you live with yourself, you are yourself. So presumably you know what you are feeling. But many of us go through, maybe not life, but we go through a day without really checking in. How am I feeling? Because maybe we think that it's bad to feel in a certain way, and we just do things to not feel. That's also quite common. So what can you do to notice and to become more self-aware and to notice how you're feeling? Well, actually, getting feedback and asking for feedback can help you to create more self-awareness if you have some blind spots. But on a more day-to-day basis, in terms of checking in with yourself, you can begin to reflect. And some people find it useful to journal. So journaling means that at the end of the day, you write down what happened for you during that day. So what happened? How did you react or respond? So I use those 2 words differently. React, I use that word as when we are unconscious, not completely unconscious, but we react from an instinctual point of view. So you get angry and you just say, you show your anger to the team member without even thinking about it. Respond, I use that word in a conscious way. So you stop, you pause, you reflect, and you choose your response. So when you journal, you can note down, how did I react or respond during the day? Don't be too hard on yourself. You can do that with compassion and with curiosity, just inviting things in. And that's the other thing, noticing what's going on for you, noticing your emotions, is not to have any judgment. It is not wrong to feel anger. It is not wrong to feel afraid. It is not wrong to feel sad. It just is an emotion. So that's the first step, is being able to sit with your emotion and becoming more aware of it. And coaching can help you also to become aware, because it's like holding up a mirror in front of you. Okay, let's move to self-management. So this is how you go from reacting to responding, how you can begin to choose your responses. And I think the current circumstances are interesting, because looking at what's happening at the moment, I know that some people feel overwhelmed or perhaps even a bit fearful, or they have felt a bit fearful with the coronavirus situation. And please feel free to share in the chat box too, if any of you at any point in the last 2 or 3 weeks perhaps have felt overwhelmed or worried or out of control or whatever, anxious, whatever some of those emotions might be that have come up in you. So please feel free to share in the chat box whatever you have experienced. Thank you for sharing. And we have all the words in the chat box here: afraid, anxious, worried. Because when something like this happens, which is a crisis, and lives are being changed, that's what happens. Many of us will feel those feelings, because it's a human need to feel safe. The need for safety is a human need. We need to feel safe, secure, certain that our paycheck will come, that we have a job, that we want to know when we're going to go on holiday. We like that certainty. That's how we wired. We stick together, and we make our nests, and animals are the same. You know, we need to survive. It's our most rudimentary instinct, probably, is survival, and we need to feel safe. When we feel safe, you know, we can begin to relax. So at this moment of crisis, that very instinctive part of our brain is being triggered, which is actually the fight or flight. So what do you do with that self-management? What do? You can keep telling yourself, my income is you know, my a big part of my business is being taken away from me at the moment, is not happening. My clients are canceling. My company are laying people off, whatever that is, or I'm worried about my relatives. That's also elderly parents. That's also a big one to worry about. So we have a choice here. Those things are true. It may be true that there's loss of income. It may be true that there's health concerns. We're not debating that. What we're saying is, how can I begin to work with those emotions? And this is where we have to recognize that the brain has that instinctive or instinctual part of it, where the fear sits or the anger sits. And the way to get out of that loop of being triggered, of feeling those feelings, is actually, one of the ways can be to just breathe really deeply and to be with that emotion. It's not wrong. Because oftentimes we want to put it away, but we don't want to feel it because it's uncomfortable. But actually, it's a bit counterintuitive to go into it and just to feel it and to name it. The other day, there was something that really triggered me, and I just sat here and I just named my emotions, and I named it anger. Yes, I feel anger. Sadness. I feel sadness. There was no fear in that scenario, but actually naming it, because your emotions want to be heard. So the first step is acknowledging it. And when you breathe into it, something else happens. When you breathe, you're better able to come back to the front part of your brain, which is that frontal lobe, where our logic sits, where you actually don't think so much about just the instinctual responses. So that is a way that we can begin to work with our self-management, and it is a lifelong process. Let's move forward with the social awareness. So this is what we do and how we focus on other people. This is about empathizing with others, and empathy is often what we think about with emotional intelligence. So how can we begin to build empathy? It's about really connecting with others, really being present with others, being curious, and trying to walk in somebody else's shoes. That's often the phrase we use when it comes to empathy, trying to walk in somebody else's shoes. You won't be able to walk in your team member's shoes or in your stakeholders' shoes, but you can try to by asking them questions. What is going on for them? By being curious. And this takes time. When we're on a deadline and we have something to deliver, oftentimes we don't stop. We don't take that time to really connect. And the last pillar here of emotional intelligence is building trust and relationships. And this is what many of you said was a bit challenging. How do we build trust? Well, we use those insights from the first three pillars, your own insight about your own emotions, and recognizing perhaps that actually maybe you're feeling fear. If you don't trust somebody, what is it? Is it fear? Is it anger? What's in your way of trusting somebody? And through inquiry, you begin to build trust, to build relationships. The relationship comes before the trust. So first you have to build the relationship, to spend time together, to ask questions, to be inclusive when it comes to the whole team, bringing everybody together. So what I would like to do now is put some of this into context of project management before we go into our breakout rooms. And I want to share something about what Google found when they studied high-performing teams. Because Google have a lot of teams, and they have a whole project team allocated to studying high-performing teams, well, studying their teams. And they looked at all their teams, and they looked at why some of them were better performing. They looked at, was it due to salary? Was it due to people being friends outside work? Was it due to flexible hours? What was it? And they couldn't find a correlation between any of these factors. But what they could see was that high-performing teams were behaving differently. They were acting differently. So high-performing teams, actually, when you observed them, you found that everybody was communicating equally with everybody. So it wasn't just 3 out of 6 or 7 team members who were doing most of the talking, most of the decision-making, most of the work. Everybody was contributing in roughly equal measures. The team at Google took a step back and they thought, well, what is causing this? How come that we have situations where everybody's contributing? And they found something called psychological safety. And psychological safety means that everybody is safe enough to step forward and to share. And then they thought, okay, but how do we create psychological safety? And they found that the project leader, the manager or the leader of the team, was socially sensitive to others. What does it mean? It means that when some people are introverted and they don't really contribute much, the leader has enough social sensitivity to invite them in. So at the end of the meeting, for instance, I might ask, Joe, you haven't said so much today. What do you think about this? What are your ideas? So I actively bring those people in who are not contributing much. And I'm helping my team to consider each other. Because what's really beautiful is when everybody in a team considers each other. So those who are more extroverted hold back, and those who are more introverted come forward. Now, another piece that's really important in the puzzle here is vulnerability. And this is the word that's being talked more about at the moment. Because if I, as a leader, we come back to the superhero, if I'm the superhero who believes that I have all the answers, I don't show vulnerability because I have all the ideas. What that means is I alienate my team. But if I do the opposite, if I say to people, you know what, I've made mistakes too. Or if I say, you know what, I don't know the answer to this, to uncertainty, to complexity. I don't know the answer. Together we'll find the answer. What do you think? Then I give people permission to be who they are, to show who they are, and to contribute with what they've got. And for this to happen, for sure, emotional intelligence goes through all of these items on the screen right now. And I want to encourage you to look up Patrick Lencioni if you're not familiar with him. He's written a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And there's a really good YouTube video online. It's from a few years back. He was in Royal Albert Hall in London. It's about 40-minute long recording where he talks about actually vulnerability-based trust in the team for being the very foundation on which we build performance. And considering that many of you said that trust was something that you were a little bit challenged on, it could be a really good video for you to watch. Okay, a little bit more about fear and uncertainty and how we address that as leaders. So if you have people in your teams who are fearful because they don't know if they're going to be laid off, maybe they are uncertain because of a project goal, maybe it's got nothing to do with the current circumstances, maybe there's just a lot of uncertainty about the project and the direction, or maybe it's about which projects are going to be cancelled and which are not. The worst thing you can do is to just say to them, oh, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. That's not going to make them not worry. What you do need to do is to really come with empathy and compassion and an open mind and an open heart and really give them the opportunity to express what's going on for them. So listen, ask them, what's going on for you at the moment? How are you feeling? Is a really good question. Only after team members have been able to express, and this goes for stakeholders too, have been able to express how they're feeling, are they able to come from that middle fear part of the brain back to the logic? And then you can begin to speak to them and be more factual perhaps, or provide some clarity, some hope. And if you can provide certainty, then give some certainty. It's very difficult in uncertain times, but perhaps there is something we can hold on to, because remember, people are driven by the need for certainty. So let them know what you can give them, if whatever is there to hold on to. And the last thing I want to go through with you before we go into breakout rooms is how you can deepen your communication. especially in times of uncertainty, we need to go deep, build deep relationships. Also, when it comes to trust, it's very important to build deeper relationships. So there are 4 levels here, and only one of them is above the water. So only one of them is more like the visible, and that's content. So most people, be it project managers, change agents, or managers in general, talk about deliverables. They talk about tasks. They talk about what needs to get done. They talk about the issue. This is what I call content or topic. They talk about the stuff, deliverables. We need to talk about that, but we also need to deepen our communication. So the second level goes a little bit deeper. This is not just about what we're delivering, but it's about how we're delivering. So it's a little bit more about process, how we're going to do it, timing, sequence, etc. Most project managers are very familiar with that second step. In fact, that's largely what we train in. But the third and the fourth step are a lot more rare and challenging. This is about behaviors and emotions. So the level number 3, this is about how we are interacting with each other. What do we expect from each other? What ground rules are there? So for instance, at the moment with people working from home, it's a great opportunity to re-engage, to re-contract with each other, and to have a conversation about how are we communicating, what do we expect from each other in terms of on time, off time, what tools are we going to use, really setting those expectations for behaviors, because everything is different now that people are working so remote. And the 4th level is emotions. So asking people, how are you feeling, especially as we said, in light of current circumstances, how are you feeling at the moment? How are you feeling working from home? How are you, what's going on for you? You can also ask a team when you start a new project, how are you feeling about a new project? Just to give people the opportunity to come up with whatever is there. This is how you begin to build relationships. This is how you begin to build trust, by going down the levels of communication. So I've been talking for quite a while and I've been sharing quite a bit of content. Now there's an opportunity for you to go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes and share whatever has come up for you in the last half hour or so. What actually happens when we get to ultra high performing teams, it's almost like the leader steps away, and actually it becomes the leader can be anyone in the team, so everybody steps forward at the time when leadership is required. That's something I think that takes a while to get to, because it means that we all know each other very well, we all trust each other very well, we have all of these conversations, we use all of these levels on the screen. And also what happens, because it takes more to create high performance, is that we share each other's goals, not just work goals, but private goals. We become interested in each other. If somebody wants to run a marathon, the team supports them. If somebody wants to lose weight, the team supports them. That becomes like that unit where everybody can take turns in leading. It's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. So company cultures differ, as you rightly said, and team cultures differ. So the culture of one team that's working really well and a new person joins may be completely different to another team where a new person joins. In both situations, it's a joint responsibility to create that trust and to make it happen. So I would say, ideally, if you're joining a team where they're emotionally quite clued up, then you would, in the best scenario, see them being curious about who you are, inviting you in, asking you about your experiences, and being really open towards you. And you would do the same with them. They don't take a step towards you. You need to take a step towards them and ask them, tell me more about who you are. How long have you been here? What do you enjoy doing? Just really getting to know people at a personal level. And then if it comes natural and you integrate well, perfect. If you don't integrate well and you feel actually they're not including me or whatever it is, perhaps then it's beginning to go down to the third level interactions and saying, perhaps to the project leader or to the one you're working for, I wonder if we could talk about kind of what you expect from me, and then maybe what we can have that dialogue about what we expect from each other. It's not the usual conversation people have, but I think it's very necessary. One of the best questions that you can ask, and that goes for everybody on this call, your clients, is how would you like me to communicate with you? How would you like me to communicate setbacks to you? Or even if you join a new team, how would you like me to communicate my work progress to you? Because in that way, you're much more likely to align with whatever is expected. And then hopefully the tables will turn and it becomes a two-way conversation also about what you expect from them. I just have 2 more slides left. And then if you have questions in the meantime, please put them in the chat box and we will then look at questions. Really, drop your superhero mentality if you have any of that left. The idea that we know all the answers when we live in an uncertain world is just not realistic. This is sharing some content here from Liz Wiseman, who wrote the book Multipliers, and perhaps some of you are familiar with the book. It's a few years old now. She talks about 2 different types of leaders, a diminisher and a multiplier. A diminisher, in many ways, is the negative superhero, the person who even is a little bit arrogant, who believes that he's the smartest person in the room, who gives direction, and who doesn't leave space for others to think through challenges. Whereas the multiplier is somebody who makes people feel smarter than they are. So somebody who multiplies the smarts of others. So this person will coach, teach, ask questions. They will still be very, very demanding. They'll say, this is what we need to get to. How do we do that? So they're asking the difficult and the challenging questions of the team, but they very much create a safe environment to do that. This really is what we have been talking about so far. And they don't put themselves in the center. They put the team in the center. So what are some of the questions that you can ask? Well, here are just some examples. What's on your mind? Always a good one. What are we not seeing that's new or different? How do we better access our knowledge and creativity? What's working well for other teams that we can replicate? What other opportunities are there? I think especially in this time, we can get so caught up with the threats that are present to us. But with every risk, there is a threat and an opportunity. Are we seeing the opportunities? Currently, I can tell you in my situation, because I run a lot of workshops, almost all of my work has been cancelled. And I even do a lot of online coaching for some big clients. And I thought, fantastic, we can still do online coaching. No, because they're in the construction industry and it's not going well. So they've cancelled all learning and development. So I was running another big program with a big oil and gas firm in Indonesia remotely. And I thought, great, we can continue that. It's remote. No, because the oil price has crashed. It's the lowest, I think, for over several decades. So actually, personally, my diary is completely blank, like I think, for at least 6 weeks. And it could go on for longer. But I choose to see the opportunity. Because what, am I going to sit and worry about an empty diary? No, I will see the opportunity, learn, connect, ground myself, relax, whatever all these opportunities that are present to us. And the same goes for a team. What are we not seeing? What are the opportunities to us? That's what good leaders will ask also in times of uncertainty. And these what if questions, the last 2 questions here, they're kind of magical. What if? What if somebody said to you, you don't have to work for 6 weeks and you can do whatever you want apart from going outside? What if we had no constraints? What if we could start all over? What would we do then? So play with these questions with your team and see if it begins to unlock some potential. And before we get to the questions, I just want to give you a chance to access more resources. There's obviously the book, which is available on Amazon. It only just the last 6 months did this second edition come out. On my own website, SusanneMadsen.com, there are a ton of resources. You don't need to register. I've taken all of that out. I've deleted my mailing list because I just want you to access it. So you don't, you can just go in and you can download resources. I also have a lot of short YouTube videos, typically 3-4 minutes long, on all kinds of topics that we've touched upon today. There are also some longer webinars that are recorded that are on my YouTube channel. And then, of course, there is, would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. There's also Twitter, etc. So that's just a little bit about how you can connect. But it would be really good to open up for some questions also. And I don't know if we've got any questions in the chat box.
Susanne, yes, we have. Thomas asked a quite interesting question, which was how to cultivate emotional intelligence while national leaders and their societies drift more towards heroic and selfish behavior.
Yeah, you know what, in a way, so it's concerning. I think many people find it concerning. In another way, again, what's the opportunity? I think the opportunity is for us to see how not to do it. And so many people are becoming aware of how appalling it is when there is, from many world leaders at the moment, no trust, not wanting to understand the others, not wanting to walk in other people's shoes. And you're right, the emotional intelligence is not there. So I think we should take it as an opportunity to see how not to do it. And maybe say to people, imagine if everybody on the team were like, and I'm not going to name world leaders, but imagine if we took on that kind of stance, how bad it would be for our project. So perhaps that's a way we can turn it around to unite in how not to do it. Because for sure, they're not good role models. And it's a shame.
Another question that came is from Emmanuel. Emmanuel, I hope I pronounce your name correctly, which is, how can you address a situation when a colleague does not want to work with a more innovative way and tools, presumably like using emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, it's about understanding with openness and with compassion almost what is holding that team member back. In many cases, although we cannot jump to conclusion, of course, it might be fear-driven. So fear that I will be no good, fear that I'm not innovative. Maybe they have some kind of story going in their head about innovation and or I can't do this, or it won't work, or whatever that story is. First of all, it's about really understanding what's happening for them. Other options are to obviously make them see the benefit in switching. But you cannot speak logic to somebody if they are already in their emotional, illogical brain. That's why first you have to listen to them, really understand them, make sure that they get all the emotions off their chest. Then you can begin to share a little bit more rationally what the benefits are by shifting. A last resort, which isn't so nice, but it's to create what we call a burning platform. So you make that person feel so uncomfortable where they are because everybody is over there innovating. So you almost create a no choice for them. You make it uncomfortable for them. And there's various ways we can make it uncomfortable for somebody to stay where they are in the status quo, creating some incentives for them to move across. Slowing down change is yet another way you can work with that person. So give them time to adapt. Because if we ask somebody to work in an innovative way very quickly, they might not be able to digest it quickly enough. Some people just need time. So there are a few pointers for you. Yes, and I think this is where team building comes in. And there are various ways we can do team building. And it's an ongoing process. It doesn't just happen. And actually, as somebody mentioned previously, the lady who actually asked the question was, when somebody new joins a team, you may go back to a not high-performing team again. So every time somebody joins, you may have to do a bit of team building. A really good way is to do make people take a personality assessment. So there are a number of them around. There is, I think, Gallup, they've got the Strength Finder. There is Insights, they've got a version of the DISC personality profiling. MBTI is another one, but I would recommend the one that's called Insights, but there is a cost to it. And you probably need a kind of a professional facilitator to come and work you through it. What these profiling tools do is that they focus on what somebody is good at. They focus on what somebody's personality traits are. So whether I'm more of a structured person, whether I'm more of an outgoing person, whether I'm more of a more like task-oriented person, or more of an empathetic person. And when the whole team goes through something like that with, let's say, an external facilitator, where there's no judgment, we're just looking at who we are, it opens up conversations for how we can accept each other, how we can work with each other, how we are, how we can get better at communicating so that we cater for each other's needs. So that's a really beautiful way to do it. And then you have otherwise traditional, more like traditional team building exercises where people do something together. But a third thing I would definitely mention is sit down and agree ground rules. When you start a new project, and do it regularly with a project team, what are our ground rules? What do we expect from each other? I briefly mentioned it before. How are we going to communicate with each other? How are we going to do team meetings? What are we going to do if somebody turns up 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late for a meeting? Is that okay? What do we do about if somebody doesn't feel good? Do we want to talk about it together? What do we do when somebody sends an email at 9 p.m.? Am I expected to answer it? So really sitting down and agreeing what we expect from each other is something that is, I think, a cornerstone to high-performing teams.